I heard the thud before I saw anything. Elliot's badge hitting Cassie Langston's desk like the gavel at his own execution. She blinked, confused, lips still half curled in that smirk she'd walked in with. I watched from the hallway, clipboard in hand, the kind of witness you become by accident and remember for life. He didn't say a word, didn't ask for clarification, just turned and walked out, the same way he used to walk into morning briefings, quiet, focused, untouchable. Only this time, it wasn't his stride that echoed through the floor. It was the vacuum he left behind. People talk a lot about power, about titles and corner offices and who signs off on what. But Elliot Grant never needed any of that. He had something better: weight. That silent, immovable gravity of someone who built everything from the studs up. Who knew every clause in our grant paperwork by heart, who remembered birthdays, interns' names, the birth order of every damn server in the data center. It was 6:42 a.m. when I watched him that last time. He was always first in, beating the cleaning crew, unlocking the lab before half of us had even left the driveway. Coffee in one hand, tablet in the other, black windbreaker folded across his arm like some nerd's version of a general's coat. The research and innovation wing was Elliot. 11 years ago, it had been a junkyard with flickering fluorescents and 2 broken Keurigs. He turned it into a federally certified think tank with live contracts from DARPA, NSF, and half the tech accelerators on the eastern seaboard. He didn't care about buzzwords, didn't do press. I once watched him kill a 3MA drone proposal because it lacked quantifiable hypothesis structure. The man made interns cry and come back smarter. He fought for our lab funding like it was his last will and testament. And then one morning, Gerald Langston, the new VP, walks in wearing a $700 smile and a daughter on his arm. Cassie, 26. MBA from a university better known for its football team. No STEM background, no publications, no clue. All hands 10 minutes, the group chat buzzed. We gathered in the West Conference Room like it was a hostage situation. Gerald stood at the front like he was unveiling a statue. Everyone, meet Cassie Langston, your new operations lead for research and development. The silence in that room was glacial. Elliot didn't even look up from his notes until she spoke. I'm excited to bring fresh energy to this place, she chirped, popping her gum like punctuation. And Elliot, so grateful you're staying on. You'll be reporting to me now. Basically, my secretary. Laughter, not from the team, from her. A single, ridiculous, echoing laugh that landed like a stink bomb in the middle of a war room. Elliot didn't flinch. He just stood up, took off his badge, walked the 10 feet to her desk, set it down gently like it was radioactive, and left. Some people thought he was bluffing, that he'd cool off and come back with a lawyer, or maybe just a mug and a sarcastic t-shirt. But those of us who really knew him, we knew the rules had just changed. And if you've made it this far into the story, if your jaw is where mine was when I saw that badge hit the desk, please take a second to like the video and hit subscribe. 97% of our listeners forget, but your support helps the team tell more stories just like this one. Back in the conference room, Cassie smirked and spun around in his chair like she'd just won a game show. Okay, let's get started. I'll need a list of active grants by noon. Someone, maybe Sarah from compliance, muttered, "You might want to start with figuring out who actually owns them." But Cassie didn't hear it, or didn't care. That's the problem with inherited power. It doesn't come with the instruction manual. And we were about to find out just how expensive that oversight could get. Cassie Langston's heels clicked like threats on the tile. Too fast, too loud, like the floor itself wasn't ready for her. She swept in wearing a blazer that still had fold lines and a lanyard badge clipped to her Birkin bag like a kindergarten name tag. I'm so excited to finally be part of the Langston family legacy, she beamed, as if R&D were just a cozy mom-and-pop shop her daddy handed her after brunch. Gerald stood beside her like a pageant handler, grinning so wide you could almost hear his dental work. Everyone, thanks for gathering on such short notice. I'd like to formally introduce Cassie Langston, our new operations lead for research and development. He gestured with both hands, like we were unveiling a bronze statue instead of an MBA with no clue where the servers were. I could feel the air change. Even the interns stopped fake typing. Elliot, our director, our North Star, was sitting 2 rows back, reviewing something on his tablet, like none of this applied to him. Calm, focused. Until Cassie opened her mouth. I know transitions can be awkward, she said, smiling that kind of smile people reserve for waiters they don't plan to tip. But I've reviewed the org chart, and I think we're going to streamline things around here. Elliot, right? She turned toward him like she was meeting the janitor. You'll be reporting directly to me now. Basically, my secretary. The room didn't gasp. It froze. A fluorescent light flickered. Someone shifted their chair. I watched Elliot close his tablet, slide it into his bag, and then stand. No outburst, no quip, just a slow, surgical motion. He reached for his ID badge, the one with a decade of wear, 2 faded stickers, and a security clearance embedded in the chip, walked forward, and placed it, delicately, right in front of Cassie like he was laying down a chess piece. She laughed. A short, confused chuckle like she didn't understand the move. But I did. Everyone in that room who'd pulled overtime in the hurricane of last year's DoD deadline understood. He turned without a word, adjusted the strap on his shoulder, and walked out, like gravity was heavier behind him than in front. Cassie blinked. Did he just... Gerald cleared his throat. He's probably just cooling off. Someone, I think it was Joe from procurement, whispered, "He's not coming back." Cassie spun toward the projector. Okay, let's dive in. Who has access to the budget approvals? Not a single hand moved. She clapped twice like we were golden retrievers. Guys? Hello? Nobody answered. Because Elliot Grant wasn't a name on a spreadsheet. He was the spreadsheet. He was the one who designed the grant workflows, built the vendor systems, hand-wrote the risk mitigation reports in triplicate, and still somehow remembered that Diego in Lab 3C couldn't work Thursdays because his son had therapy. He wasn't just the principal investigator. He was the reason we even had funding to investigate. Gerald smiled tightly, but his eyes were twitching. We'll sort this out. Let's move on. But we didn't. Because what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that Elliot's resignation wasn't emotional. It was surgical. The badge on that desk was just the first incision. Cassie moved into Elliot's office like she was redecorating a reality show set. His frame certifications were still on the wall when she dragged in a fake Monstera plant and a gold acrylic nameplate that read Cassie Langston, MBA. She didn't ask for the Wi-Fi password. She shouted across the bullpen, "Hey, how do I connect to the printer? Is there, like, a shared drive or something?" That afternoon, she posted a selfie from Elliot's chair. Peace sign. Duck lips. First day as R&D queen at Girl Boss Vibes and Nepotism Works, sorry not sorry. Meanwhile, HR marked Elliot's file with voluntary resignation, no hostile action. I know because I saw the email, legal never got involved. No exit interview, no asset checklist. Just a quiet assumption that this was a tantrum from a middle-aged man unwilling to take orders from a younger woman. They expected him to slink back. Maybe with coffee and a forced apology, but the only thing that came back was a final timestamp on the federal grant portal. You see, our biggest lifeline wasn't just the $200 million in funding, it was the renewal. Every 90 days, we had to file a compliance update with the granting body, budgets, metrics, milestones, signed off by the principal investigator, Elliot, and the clock was already ticking, 36 hours left. Cassie didn't even know the portal existed until finance emailed her with the subject line, "Compliance Update Access?" She squinted at the spreadsheet like it was written in Braille. She called a meeting. "Okay, guys," she said, pacing in heels too tight for her ankles. "We just need to log in and get this form filed. I'm sure someone has the password." No one did, because Elliot didn't use passwords. He used biometric two-factor tied to a government-issued key fob, and the only place it ever went was his jacket pocket. Gerald tried calling procurement, then legal, then compliance. Each call ended the same. "We're not authorized to act without the PI's sign-off." At 10:34 a.m., Cassie messaged the grant committee directly. "Hi, just checking in. I'm the new operations lead and will be submitting our quarterly update today. Can you please reset the login for me?" Their reply was colder than vacuum. "We require all grant communications to come directly from the registered principal investigator. Please advise when Mr. Grant is available." She forwarded the message to Gerald with the subject line, "Annoying." He didn't reply. By 1:17 p.m., Gerald marched into her office. I heard it through the wall. "I thought you handled this," he hissed. Cassie groaned. "It's just paperwork. Tell legal to switch the name already." He pinched the bridge of his nose. "It's not that simple. You can't just swap the PI on a federal grant like it's a parking pass." She rolled her eyes. "Then call Elliot." Silence. We all heard it. No one had called Elliot. No one even knew where he'd gone. His email bounced. His phone went straight to voicemail. HR never asked for his badge back. IT never disabled his admin permissions because no one knew what he owned. And let me tell you, when Elliot walked out, he didn't slam the door. He locked it from the inside and left them holding copies of keys that didn't fit anything anymore. That night, Cassie was still in his office, lights on, hissing into a speakerphone while trying to explain to the federal grant officer why a compliance report signed by someone not the registered PI should still be considered valid. She used words like process adaptation and digital transformation. The line went quiet. Then came a response that floated through the vent and settled like smoke over the whole floor. Without Mr. Grant's certification, your funding is non-compliant. Cassie blinked. What does that mean? The line cut. 30 hours left. And counting. Cassie spent half the morning toggling between browser tabs and chewing on a pen cap like the login screen was a riddle only beneath her pay grade. The federal portal kept bouncing her back with a cold, unfriendly message in red. Authentication failed. Biometric key not detected. PI access only. She tried again and again, then slammed the mouse like it was defective. Why does this feel like trying to hack into the Pentagon? She muttered, even though half of us heard her. Because it was, in a way. Elliot had locked this system down tighter than a submarine hatch, and for good reason. These compliance updates weren't just some Excel file you fax to Washington and hope for the best. This was the tether between our research division and $200 million in government funds. Without that tether, everything, equipment, salaries, even the damn electricity in the server wing, was subject to immediate suspension. But Cassie didn't understand any of that. She kept clicking. Who designed this thing? She barked. That's when Diego, our senior analyst, said it without looking up. Elliot. Cassie froze for a half second, then scoffed like the name didn't matter. Finance pinged Gerald shortly after lunch. Subject line? Urgent. Grant access needed. Can Elliot join for a handoff call? We're hitting protocol walls across all compliance access points. Without his verification, we can't file before the deadline. Gerald replied with one sentence. Cassie has it under control. No need to involve Elliot. If hubris had a ringtone, that was it. And still, no one had spoken to Elliot. HR sent one feeler email. Hope you're doing well. Let us know if you'd like to wrap up your exit docs. And got nothing but auto-reply purgatory. His phone stayed dark. His desk was exactly as he left it. Empty mug, legal pads lined up, and that single sticky note on the monitor that now felt like a warning more than a habit. Document everything. Assume nothing. By 3:30 p.m., the compliance portal timed out from too many failed attempts. Cassie threw her hands up. Whatever, I'll just resubmit under my credentials. That's when she made her second mistake. She tried to open a new user profile and list herself as acting PI. Legal caught it within the hour and called a meeting. Not with her, but with Gerald. Behind a closed door, 3 department heads explained, slowly and in small words, that federal grant assignments couldn't be reassigned without the explicit, documented consent of the existing principal investigator. Gerald's voice, muffled through the glass, was tight. So what are we supposed to do? One of them replied flatly, you get Elliot back, or you explain to the committee why the project is collapsing. It was around 5 p.m. when the real email hit. No pleasantries, no emojis, just 5 sentences from the federal grant liaison. To whom it may concern, we have received conflicting communications regarding the upcoming compliance report. For clarity, we are requesting immediate direct contact with Mr. Elliot Grant, listed as Principal Investigator of Record. Please confirm his availability within 12 hours. Failure to do so will result in project review and possible revocation of funding. Cassie read it 3 times, then spun her monitor toward Gerald. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to modernize this place, and they're obsessed with some dude who refuses to answer his phone. Gerald didn't say anything. He just sat back in Elliot's old chair and rubbed his forehead with both hands, because it was finally sinking in. Elliot wasn't just a dude, he was the entire firewall between this company and the fiscal abyss, and now they couldn't even find him. The moment Gerald actually opened the grant agreement, really opened it, not just the glossy summary page the development team had spoon-fed him, his mouth stopped working. I watched from the corner of the conference room while he scanned the digital PDF with that slow, sinking expression usually reserved for emergency room waiting benches. Clause 4.1.1. All funding renewals, compliance submissions, and budgetary authorizations are contingent upon active participation and sign-off by the named principal investigator of record. That name? Elliot Grant, not research director, not any qualified designee, just him. Every legal tether, every quarterly dollar, every risk-mitigated milestone. All of it attached to one human being, and Gerald had walked him out like a slow barista. He tapped the clause again like that might make it change. Why didn't anyone flag this? Legal didn't look up. We did, in every grant summary packet for the last 4 years. Cassie, who was perched on the arm of a chair like we were still in a dorm lounge, rolled her eyes. Okay, but just swap the name. I'm here now. I have an MBA. No one moved. Then Karen from legal, sharp, soft-spoken, 4 decades in contracts, closed her laptop with a deliberate click. Miss Langston, principal investigator transfers on federal grants require formal documentation signed by the existing PI. It's a multi-week process involving institutional review, federal confirmation, and typically an in-person handoff. And that's only if the PI agrees. Cassie blinked like she was trying to buffer the words. I'm sorry. Are you saying we have to ask him to approve me? Karen raised a single eyebrow. No, I'm saying if he doesn't approve you, the funding stops. That's not a suggestion. That's law. Gerald looked like he'd swallowed a live battery. I checked the clock. 18 hours to compliance deadline. Cassie scoffed, grabbing her phone. Whatever, I'll DM him. She actually tried to pull up his LinkedIn. Karen coughed softly. He doesn't have one. Cassie groaned. Is he like a ghost? I don't think she understood how close she was to the truth. You see, Elliot had designed this system to be airtight, not out of ego, out of responsibility. For years, Gerald had treated grants like bonus rounds on a slot machine. But Elliot? He read every footnote. He reviewed every comma. He earned that PI designation the hard way, through decades of credibility, not nepotism and Wi-Fi selfies. Gerald finally spoke, low and dry. We underestimated him. Cassie scoffed again. We overdramatized him. My God, it's not like he's the president. Legal didn't blink. Actually, Karen said, folding her arms, in the eyes of the federal committee for this project, he is. Silence settled like concrete. I saw it click behind Gerald's eyes. That this wasn't just a paperwork issue, this was structural collapse. Every purchase order, every invoice, every subcontractor, every penny drawn from the grant budget was now in violation unless validated by Elliot Grant. And Elliot Grant had gone completely dark. Cassie stood up, still smiling, still clueless. Fine, we'll figure it out. I mean, worst case, we just pay back the feds or whatever. That was when Gerald actually turned gray. Cassie, that's $200 million. She blinked, then sat back down. No more hashtags, no more jokes, because the only person who could authorize salvation was the man she'd called her secretary, and he wasn't taking calls. The screen flickered to life like a courtroom camera. 8 rectangular windows arranged in 2 polite rows, federal logos in corners, neutral backgrounds, stern faces. It wasn't a meeting, it was an audit dressed in business casual. Cassie, fresh from a $400 blowout and gripping her rose gold clicker like it was a weapon, launched into her opening slide. Welcome, everyone. I'm Cassie Langston, new operations lead for R&D, and I'll be walking you through the Q2 compliance highlights, team productivity metrics, and our strategic modernization initiatives. Gerald sat off to the side, arms folded, nodding solemnly like he was watching a TED Talk on his daughter's future. Cassie's slides were gorgeous. Animated transitions, buzzword bingo, stock photos of diverse people in lab coats smiling like toothpaste models. Slide 2. Disruption through scalable innovation. Slide 3. Forward momentum across all verticals. Slide 4. Synergizing cross-departmental impact. You could feel the disinterest oozing from the federal committee. One woman typed something, another sipped coffee without ever moving her eyes. Then, 5 minutes in, someone spoke. A man. Middle window, top row, crisp voice, unblinking. I'm sorry, who are you again? Cassie paused mid-click. I'm Cassie Langston, the operations lead. We were told Mr. Elliot Grant would be attending this session. Gerald leaned in. Yes. Well, Elliot has since stepped away. Cassie's been onboarded. She's fully across all operations. A long pause. Another face leaned in. This one older, Fewer pixels, more authority. His badge tag read DOI Oversight Chair. Is Ms. Langston the principal investigator of record? Gerald cleared his throat. Not yet, but we're initiating the internal transfer. That is not compliant with federal protocol. Cassie forced a grin. I assure you, I've been working very closely with the team and reviewing the documentation, and we are fully committed to maintaining transparency and innovation. The voice cut through her sentence like a scalpel. Without the PI present and without an approved reassignment form on file, we consider this project non-compliant, effective immediately. You could have heard a stylus hit the floor. Gerald sat frozen, mouth slightly open. Cassie stared at the camera, her smile twitching into a grimace, her fingers still hovering over the clicker. No one else moved. Not legal, not finance, not even me. Another voice, softer but just as final, spoke from the far left window. We'll be issuing a formal notice to your institution within the hour. If Mr. Grant wishes to contact us regarding reinstatement, he may do so directly. Otherwise, this concludes our business. And just like that, the screen went black. The meeting window closed itself. Not minimized. Closed. No one breathed. Cassie lowered the clicker like it had betrayed her. Gerald didn't speak. He didn't look at her. He just reached for the glass of water beside him, lifted it halfway, then set it back down, untouched. I looked around the room. The air had changed. Not with panic. Not yet. Just silence. The kind you hear in the half second between lightning and thunder. Gerald showed up just after 7, wearing a wrinkled blazer and a look like he hadn't slept since the screen went dark. No driver, no assistant, no smug confidence, just a man parked awkwardly in front of a modest ranch house with a rusted mailbox and wind chimes made from old socket wrenches. Elliot's porch light was already on. I know, because I was there. I'd been helping Elliot organize his old files, boxes of printed grant applications, hand-edited drafts with coffee stains, and red pen slashes from a time before digital dashboards made everything feel fake. We weren't expecting company, but Elliot didn't look surprised when the doorbell rang. He just glanced at the clock, exhaled slowly, and walked to the door like it was another compliance review. He opened it. Gerald didn't speak right away. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. Pale, damp from sweat or shame or both. The man who once boomed across conference rooms now stood like a child on the edge of a principal's office, holding his hands in front of him like they might catch what was already falling. Elliot, he started, voice cracking just a little. Look, I know things were said, mistakes were made, we didn't handle the transition the right way, and look, I'm not here to argue. Elliot said nothing. Gerald rushed to fill the space. We need your help. Just for one meeting. You don't have to come back. Just activate the portal, sign the compliance page. That's it. Then we'll fix everything after. Titles, contracts, anything you want. Elliot stepped aside and motioned toward the dining table. It wasn't a boardroom, just a second-hand oak table with a coffee ring near the edge and a stack of manila folders arranged with military precision. Gerald sat down like it was a trial. Elliot didn't pull up a chair. He didn't sit across from him or lean in to make a point. Instead, he reached for one folder. No label, no post-it. Just a single worn grant agreement. He opened it and flipped silently to page 19. Clause 63.2. All compliance responsibilities, renewal authorizations, and performance assessments are the sole legal and functional responsibility of the principal investigator as named herein. No substitution or delegation shall be permitted without the express written consent of the PI and federal approval through channels defined in Appendix B. He turned the folder to face Gerald and tapped the clause once with his index finger. You should have started with this. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't smug. It was precise. Like a scalpel, not meant to wound, just to expose. Gerald scanned the page like he could somehow change the ink with enough regret. I thought we had time, he muttered. I thought she could learn. Elliot didn't answer. He didn't have to. The air in the room was already doing the talking. Every second that passed stretched into a reminder that Gerald had gambled away 11 years of credibility on a title swap and a pretty PowerPoint. That the funding wasn't just money, it was trust. And trust wasn't transferable, not with a fake smile, not with a LinkedIn update, and definitely not with a just sign this real quick desperation tour. Gerald reached for the folder, fingers trembling slightly. Is there any way back from this? Elliot folded the document shut and slid it back into the stack. I'm not the one you need to convince. That was all he said. No speech, no lecture, just a quiet return to the stillness that had always been his power. Gerald stood up slowly, shoulders sagging. He paused in the doorway like he wanted to say more, but there was nothing left to salvage with words, only consequences. As the door clicked shut behind him, Elliot turned to me, picked up a yellow legal pad, and resumed jotting notes like he hadn't just watched an empire start to crumble on his doorstep. The badge Cassie mocked, still on his bookshelf, still untouched, still the only one that ever mattered. The black SUVs rolled up just before noon, no logos, no plates, just tinted glass and sharp silhouettes stepping out into the sunlight like shadows with authority. They didn't wait to be invited in. The building's front desk buzzed, then went silent. By the time the committee reached the main conference room, 3 VPs were already scrambling to rearrange chairs. Cassie stood by the whiteboard, pretending to review charts. Gerald paced like he was preparing for a deposition he knew he'd already lost. No handshakes, no small talk. The head of the audit team, an older woman named Ms. Farrell, set her briefcase on the table, opened it, and pulled out a stack of documents like she'd been laying down cards at a high-stakes poker table. She didn't even sit. We're conducting a full compliance audit effective immediately. The quarterly filing was not submitted, and our calls to the principal investigator of record have gone unanswered. As such, per Section 5.7 of the Grant Charter, we are here to determine whether this institution remains eligible for continued funding. Cassie stood straighter. I'm the operations lead. We're working on... Farrell cut her off with a glance. We are not here for operations. We are here for the principal investigator. We require his written status and intent before any discussion proceeds. You could feel it. A wall, fast and high, dropped straight through the center of the room. No way around it, only through. Gerald cleared his throat. We've asked Mr. Grant to, join us. He should be here shortly. Ms. Farrell raised an eyebrow. If he is not here in 30 minutes, we will consider the grant in violation and begin deactivation procedures. That's when I got the text. Just 3 words. I'm downstairs. Now. When Elliot walked into the building, no one clapped, no one cheered, but people moved, subconsciously, respectfully, as if the air around him made space first. He didn't look at the walls he used to decorate, or the offices now filled with people who didn't know his name. He walked straight to the conference room, opened the door, and stood just inside the frame. Cassie's mouth parted. Gerald took a step forward, but Elliot wasn't looking at them. He looked at the research assistants. 4 of them, still seated on the side wall, wide-eyed, not speaking. The ones who were still in the labs late at night when Cassie had already gone home to post selfies from the executive suite. He gave them a single nod. Then he turned to Ms. Farrell and handed her 1 page. No folder, no signature line, just a clean, typed statement in 12-point font. I withdraw from this role effective today, she read aloud. Any further association with this institution, its filings, or its representation of my credentials is unauthorized. She looked up. Are you certain? Elliot nodded once. Completely. She didn't ask for clarification. She didn't need it. The rest of us did. Cassie opened her mouth, trying to play it calm. Wait, can't he just reauthorize the platform for us first? Then we can figure out... Ms. Farrell snapped the folder shut. You don't understand. The grant does not belong to the institution. It belongs to the project, and the project belongs to the principal investigator. Gerald looked like he'd just been punched behind the eyes. You're killing the funding, he said, voice barely above a whisper. No, Elliot replied. You did that when you made me irrelevant. He didn't yell. He didn't gloat. He didn't even look angry. He just looked finished. And for the first time, the people in that room understood that silence isn't always compliance. Sometimes, it's the final signature. The room didn't exhale until Elliot was gone. The door closed behind him with the kind of finality you don't hear until it's too late. Miss Farrell waited 2 full beats, then turned her gaze toward Gerald and Cassie, slowly, deliberately, like a judge letting the silence be its own verdict. She lifted Elliot's document with a single hand and tapped her finger once against the edge. Thank you, Mr. Grant, she said to the paper, not the people. That concludes our relationship with this institution. No explosion, no drama. Just a flat line, dressed as a farewell. Cassie opened her mouth, but the words got stuck somewhere between panic and disbelief. She looked at her father for backup. Gerald didn't even blink. He just sat there, eyes empty, staring straight through the table as if somewhere deep in his brain he'd finally begun to grasp what $200 million actually looked like and how fast it could disappear. By morning, the research wing was silent. Emails bounced. Access revoked. Contractors left without collecting their final invoices. The interns didn't even show up. Word had spread, faster than any press release ever could. All grant-funded systems were frozen. The feds didn't need to announce anything. The blinking red, non-compliant stamp on the shared dashboard did it for them. The lights in the lab hallway. Motion sensitive. They never turned on that day. Cassie's nameplate was gone by Friday. Gerald stepped down to pursue other opportunities the following week. But Elliot? He never said a word publicly, never posted, never explained. He didn't have to. The silence was the message. A week later, I got a call from someone at the Applied Sciences Council. Quiet, respectful, not even sure if he'd want to hear from them. They didn't ask for his resume. They asked for his principles. I passed it along, of course. They'd already left a handwritten letter in his mailbox, thanking him for what he built, offering him full autonomy to lead a new initiative from scratch. No politics, no Cassies, no VPs playing dress-up with other people's legacies. But the most powerful note came from someone closer, a young associate researcher, the kind of kid Elliot used to mentor with brutal honesty and relentless standards. He forwarded it to me. No need to reply, just wanted to thank you for walking out. That moment taught me more about integrity than any seminar ever could. Elliot didn't respond. He just stared at the message for a while, then turned back to his desk, where the original charter for the next project already sat. Blank page on top, his pen resting beside it. He didn't raise his voice. He never had to, because when real power walks out, the building feels it long after the door closes.